You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started. Hey, real quick, guys, before we start the episode, I want to share something that I'm really excited about. I know how hard it can be when your hormones feel out of balance, low energy, mood swings, and not feeling like yourself, which is why I created the supplement line Optimal Harmony. With natural science-backed ingredients, it's designed to support your hormones, stabilize your mood, and help you reclaim your energy and confidence, because when your hormones are balanced, everything feels easier. You deserve to feel amazing every day, so let Optimal Harmony line of supplements help you get there. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week, I'm really pleased to have joining me fellow naturopathic doctor, Dr. Anna Sitkoff. She is also a renowned mushroom expert, so I'm really excited to have her on the show so we can learn about all of the amazing things that mushrooms can do for our body and for our health in general. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So can you start by sharing your story? How did you want to become a naturopathic doctor, and how did you become a mushroom expert? Like, tell me all the things.
Yeah, so I think that my interest in health really started at a pretty young age. Both of my parents had chronic disease. My dad had chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and my mom had and still has chronic Lyme disease, and everything that goes with that. And so I always saw them going to acupuncturists and naturopathic doctors in addition to their MDs. And I think seeing that got me really interested in nutrition and herbal medicine initially. And I studied nutrition in undergrad, and then apprenticed with an herbalist, and was really thought that I was going to be a dietitian. And that was kind of my focus, using food for healing. And then my dad started seeing a Chinese medical doctor in addition to his oncologist. And that Chinese medical doctor prescribed a mushroom blend.
Oh.
And I had, of course, known about mushrooms as like food, medicinal food, and using like mostly it was just like shiitake mushrooms that were talked about in my like nutrition classes. And then in my herbal medicine apprenticeships, mushrooms were just kind of like
not
talked about. Yeah, really not talked about.
Yeah.
And so I just got really interested, and I was moving to Washington anyways from California, and living in Washington, there's just like mushrooms everywhere. And I was working at an apothecary at that time and really doing a lot of wild crafting with herbal medicine. And really my whole life was focused around botanical medicine. But this like, I got a mushroom worm basically, where I was like, got in there and I just like needed to know everything.
Yeah.
And there weren't a ton of resources at that time. There's like a few books. And at the time I had been like teaching some classes about botanical medicine at the apothecary, and the best way to kind of understand a subject, I think, is to force yourself to teach about it.
Yeah.
And so I started just like doing all of the mushroom research possible and getting to know the mushrooms too, just through like a wild crafting perspective, and collecting them, processing them, learning to make medicine with mushrooms because it's different than with plants.
Yeah.
And then I started a mushroom blog that really was like, the intention was so that I wouldn't have to like give my I guess it was the people going to my classes at that time. So I wouldn't have to like give them handouts. I could just like, go on the blog. All the information that we're talking about is on the blog. But yeah, I just kept getting more and more interested. My medicinal mushrooms of the Pacific Northwest classes got very popular. I was teaching them like multiple times a year at different herb conferences and for different herbalists in the area. And then I think that interest plus my botanical medicine background and nutrition background, I felt like I just needed more. I needed to I wanted to go to medical school, but I didn't want to go to traditional medical school.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be able to see patients and prescribe food and botanicals and mushrooms and really just use naturopathic medicine. And so my mentor at the time, who was the owner of the apothecary in Seattle. She was like, you should just be a naturopath.
Yeah.
Like, you should just be a naturopath.
You're like, I kind of already am one. I just need to go get that extra schooling.
Yeah. And so I started school at Bastyr, and at that time I was still just like really so passionate about mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms. And that was always in the background. And I was always writing for my blog. And I met some really important mentors at that time, Jeff Chilton being one of them, who owns Namex. And he's like, still like a very close friend. And he gave me a lot of different amazing opportunities, like writing the textbook chapter on medicinal mushrooms in the textbook of natural medicine.
Oh, did you write that chapter?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I need to go back. I've read that book. That's a great book. I remember that chapter.
The most recent edition I wrote. I wrote that chapter.
That's so cool. Like that is like such an important book. If you're a naturopathic doctor and you're listening, you know, like, oh yeah, that is like our book. That is totally
it's our book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at school too, I was able to do laboratory research and choose whatever mushroom I wanted, basically.
Wow.
And whatever cancer cells I wanted at Bastyr. I don't know if it's still there, but we basically had like a huge vat of different kinds of cancer cells in the lab.
That's amazing.
And so I chose lymphocytic leukemia cells.
Oh, wow.
And I was looking at, along with my colleague, Olivia Freilich, we were just looking at how different extraction methods impact the immune system in different ways, and whether it has like a direct anti-cancer effect or if it's stimulating anti-cancer mechanisms in the immune system. Cool. So I got to do that research. And so it's kind of like, I feel like my mushroom journey has been so holistic. It's like from like teaching and collecting mushrooms in the forest and processing and making my own medicine, and then in the laboratory and writing. And then while in school in clinic, I just felt kind of disappointed with the options that were available to give to patients. And
a lot of supplements.
With the supplements.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of my, my professors at the time would like ask me
about what to do
and like what products they should use.
You're like, I hate all of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was like, when I graduate, like I really need to start my own medicinal mushroom supplement company.
And you did, right?
And I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah. With my husband, who's also a naturopathic doctor. And so that's been a really wonderful addition to my work as a naturopath. And so now here I am, and I have a private practice in my medicinal mushroom supplement company, and I'm still teaching about medicinal mushrooms. And I, most of all, I think love just like looking at them in the forest.
Like the true naturopathic way, right?
Totally. That's so much of the medicine. Yeah.
I feel like that is so much of the medicine. I know, as we're sitting here, if you're not watching this video, you can see she's got water in her background. She said it's a beautiful day there in Seattle. It's gorgeous. I know here I'm in Maryland, and this week it's been 60 degrees, which is like never the case. And it's been and everyone's been outside like, give me the sun, I call nature vitamin N. And I feel like it's the most underutilized vitamin in our apothecary as naturopathic doctors. Like, we just need to get outside.
Absolutely.
We are sort of like complicated houseplants, and when we don't get sunlight, we don't feel well.
Right. It's like getting some like forest bathing and just like walking around is probably more powerful than taking any like mushroom supplement.
I would think so. Right. Like, I mean, I think, and there's all the research that shows that even just looking at a picture of a plant, so like me sitting here looking at the picture of the trees in the background, actually regulates your nervous system. Like, it balances cortisol levels, and we need that part of our lives. And I think particularly like those couple of years that we were inside, and, you know, the COVID years, I feel like we were on screen. We were talking about this offline just before, that we were I spent so much time on my computer, and I feel like I was missing out. I was, here working all day, as I'm sure during the pandemic. Were you really busy? Yeah. I mean, most providers, we were so insanely busy, and, we were trying to help as many people. But then, I mean, I had a crazy crash in the end of 2021. My body was just like, nope, you need to stop working so hard and get outside.
Yep. Yeah. That was my first taste of chronic fatigue too. Yeah. Like 2021. What was happening then?
2021. It was I actually got shingles, which
oh no.
I was 37 at the time. Yeah. And I got exposed to COVID, didn't get COVID, but got shingles. And you know what actually helped me out? That was large doses of mushrooms. I feel like that's really what I focused on. Well, so thank you for sharing your story and kind of how you got to where you are. But let's dive into the actual medicine we want to talk about. So tell me let's talk about mushrooms. Where do you want to start? There's so many things, right?
There's so many things. Yeah. I think let's start with like how they work.
Perfect.
I think that's my favorite place to start. And it really all begins with the mushroom cell wall.
Yes.
So there's two main components in the mushroom cell wall that are, I think, like the heart of like how medicinal mushrooms interact with us physiologically and impact the immune system and our digestive system. Yeah. So both of those aspects are basically like long sugar molecules, polysaccharides. We've got beta glucans and we've got chitin. So let's start with beta glucans, since I think that's what most people are more familiar with. Yeah. Yeah. And there's beta glucans in oats and grains, and that's a different kind of beta glucan than what's in mushrooms, and it interacts with our immune system differently. So those beta glucans, they enter into the digestive system. They go through stomach acid, basically unchanged. They're still in their beta glucan form, and they bind to specific receptors in our lymphatic tissue within our gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or our GALT system. And there are specific receptors on our immune cells within our intestines that just bind to the beta glucans. And then once that interaction happens, that elicits an immune response. And so there's different compounds that are made that are going to be communicating with other immune cells that stimulate our natural anti-cancer and antiviral mechanisms. So specifically, there's like an increase in natural killer cells and in cytotoxic T cells, two of our main antiviral, anti-cancer mechanisms. In addition to that, it's like depending on the mushroom, there's other cytokines that are stimulated, but that basic mechanism is true for most medicinal mushrooms. And then the chitin that's in the mushrooms actually acts really similarly. So for a long time, people thought that we just couldn't digest chitin. We couldn't break it down. Chitin is it's one of the hardest substances around. It's what the exoskeletons of like insects are made of. It's like crustacean shells. It's a really hard substance. And humans actually make two different enzymes that break it down. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. And there's one made in the stomach by chief cells. And then there's also one made by other immune cells. Chitin is broken down into N-acetylglucosamine.
Oh, I think I did know that. Yeah.
Which is super interesting. Yeah. And it's like a lot of naturopaths.
I feel like I'm having a flashback to my like physiology class. Like I'm like, oh, this is I'm like remembering I've learned this at some point, but this is great to hear it again.
Yeah. And so what chitin is broken down to, N-acetylglucosamine is also just called chitosan. Yeah. Also binds to those same receptors that beta glucan does. Got it. So to the like dectin 1 and another receptor called TLR2, and stimulates a similar immune response. But what's different about chitin is that it also has kind of an interesting mediating effect on the allergic response. And so if it's not able to be broken down, which not everyone has these enzymes. There's about like 6% of the population that has a genetic variation where they don't make the enzyme to break down chitin.
Chitin, interesting.
And if you are on any kind of like proton pump inhibitor, or if you have H. pylori or atrophic gastritis, like you're not going to be making probably very much of that enzyme at all. Yeah. And when chitin is in its full form, it's more likely to actually elicit an allergic response. And so people who are like allergic to mushrooms who don't respond well to mushrooms or get like itchy with mushrooms, it's probably because they're not able to break down the chitin. Interesting. Yeah. And they might respond differently to a liquid extract, because that doesn't have chitin in it,
Got it.
then how they'll respond to just like eating mushrooms, because when you're eating mushrooms, you're getting the chitin. So that's just kind of interesting side note about mushroom reactions that we can talk about later, because I think people are always like concerned about
sometimes
mushroom toxicity or allergic responses or something. But so chitin elicits, once it's broken down, similar immune response to beta glucans, and then also similar, both of these compounds, once they make their way into your colon, they both act like prebiotics, which healthy gut microbiome is essential for a healthy immune system.
Yep.
And so they feed your good gut bacteria. They help to improve levels of bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, while decreasing levels of kind of more pathogenic bacteria in the gut. And then because, too, the chitin is broken down into N-acetylglucosamine, it really helps to support healthy gut barrier integrity and a healthy mucous membrane. And then also, because these polysaccharides are feeding your gut microbiome, they're going to be more postbiotics like short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, feeding your colon cells, also supporting healthy gut barrier integrity and gut overall.
Yeah. They're like the perfect thing. They
are the perfect
so many
thing.
Things. It's like, how
I know.
Could you not
this is why I'm
them
obsessed.
Or use them? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, name a system and I'll tell you like how mushrooms support that system. How mushrooms
impact it. Yeah. Which is super cool. But wait, can I just go back and just for our listeners, like when we're talking medicinal mushrooms, can you talk about like what specifically those are versus like, the white mushrooms that you buy at the grocery store?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of overlap. And so there's your main edible mushrooms, and there's medicinal mushrooms, and there's toxic mushrooms, and there's overlap in all of those areas.
Got it.
And so when we're talking about medicinal mushrooms, for the most part, well, it's kind of a combination of like edible and medicinal, because there's the edible mushrooms that are also medicinal, like shiitake mushrooms, maitake mushrooms, lion's mane, oyster mushrooms, enoki. These are all mushrooms that you can buy at the grocery store and eat in a meal that are also medicinal.
Yeah.
Other medicinal mushrooms that would not be considered edible, and only they're not considered edible because they're just too woody to eat.
Like too tough.
You
wouldn't want to eat. You could eat it, but you wouldn't really want to.
You wouldn't really want to. Yeah. Would be like reishi mushroom, turkey tail, chaga, cordyceps.
Yeah. Things you'll typically see in like a mushroom blend kind of supplement.
Yeah, exactly. And then the edible mushrooms that are not considered medicinal, but they are still going to have medicinal impact because they have the same fungal cell wall. Are going to be like the white button and portobello, which are actually the same genus and species, just a different form. And like lobster mushroom and hedgehog mushrooms and chanterelles, like those would be considered more like
just edible,
like delicious and edible, and you're not going to like make a
tincture out of
using those mushrooms or a tincture of those. Yeah.
But you're still going to get, as you mentioned, they still contain the polysaccharides. You're still going to get
exactly
a little bit of it, the prebiotic. You're still going to get some of the goodness. Just if we're trying to like treat cancer with it, those are not going to be the thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then there's also the like toxic / medicinal mushrooms where it's like all about the dose and preparation, where it's like psilocybe mushrooms that contain psilocybin are going to be kind of in that category.
Yep.
Amanita will kind of be in that category as well.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many of them, right?
There's so many of them. And then it's like within each common name, it's like if we get into the nitty gritty of like genus and species, there's so many species of Ganoderma. Ganoderma is the genus of reishi mushroom. And each different species is
going to have a different benefit.
Medicinal and has some different mechanisms. And
cool. It's funny. This is like a total kind of random aside, but related. For most of my adult life and as a kid, hated mushrooms, like not into them, like would never eat them. And in my late 20s, I took psilocybin, for the first time.
and it was amazing for anxiety, depression, kind of, resetting my brain. Ever since then, I'm obsessed with it. Mushrooms are my favorite food now. And I just was like, that's so interesting. It was like, it changed my brain and it changed my taste buds. And now I love them. Like, I want them anywhere. I want them in salads. I want them in everything, which just was so funny. Like, my family's like, wait, you hated these? I'm like, yeah, but I love them now. Like,
yeah. If mushrooms are good at anything, it's making more of themselves.
More mushrooms?
And I really think that they're good at kind of like, they're like right now with like this huge shroom boom and like everyone is so interested. It went from this like culture of mycophobia or just like fearing mushrooms and thinking that they're so toxic to like being obsessed.
Yeah. And you think the mushrooms did that, right? Like, they're we're getting in there. We're going to grow.
They have infected us all. yeah.
But in a good way, right? Like, they've infected us, but we're like, oh, like, hey, we're going to infect you, but you're going to like this. Yeah. It's like a beautiful commensal, commensal symbiotic relationship, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So we've kind of touched a little bit on how clearly they're so beneficial for your immune system and for gut health, but maybe we can dive into that a little bit more. So they're going to upregulate like T cells and upregulate natural killer cells.
Yeah. And we can kind of talk about it more for like specific kinds of like viral infections. I really think about mushrooms as like a tonifier of the system, right? And so I think that they're so helpful for preventing viral illness because they have a immune training effect, which is really cool as well. So if you're taking mushrooms daily for a period of time, let's say like a month, if you stop taking the mushrooms, your immune system will still continue to be stronger than it was before.
Yeah. Because of what the mushrooms have like trained your system to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that they're very useful in preventing viral illness, but then also in treating chronic viral illness because they can decrease the viral load.
Yes. That's when we treat a ton of reactivated Epstein-Barr cases in my clinic, and it's one of our favorite treatment protocols is everyone has to get on mushrooms because of it. Like, I test that like CD57, some of the like natural killer cells, and most of my patients with chronic EBV or chronic Lyme, those levels are in the tank. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, this is what we're going to know when you're getting better, when these levels go up. And it's amazing how quickly mushrooms will help that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The like reishi turkey tail maitake blend for chronic viral infections is kind of my favorite go-to. Have you been using other mushrooms as well for your Epstein-Barr?
That's pretty much the three that I use the most of, and it's usually in a blend. Are there others that can be helpful for EBV?
Those are my three
best ones.
Go-tos. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then I also, it's kind of interesting with mushrooms as far as like more acute viral infections. Yeah. Like if you're like getting a cold or just kind of a more simple cold virus. I think that mushrooms can be really helpful right after and kind of at the first signs. Okay. But in the thick of it, like while you're sick, I don't find mushrooms to be
as effective,
especially effective.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, is it, and I think maybe like upregulating the immune system too much? Like
perhaps, or it's also like it's like you want your immune system to be a certain amount of like active during that time. And there's also like certain mushrooms that, because they're immune modulating, sometimes it can be like too anti-inflammatory.
I gotcha. And sometimes we need that acute inflammatory process when the kind of infection.
But I do. So shiitake tends to be like more stimulating and more helpful in the thick of infection. But I think just through eating it tends to be like
the best way.
What I recommend. Yeah. So it's like take your mushrooms like before and after to rebuild your system, and then like when you're in it, it's like make some shiitake mushroom soup or something.
Yeah. And do some other like basic naturopathic practices. Maybe take your vitamin C or take some other things and like drink fluids. Broth. Yeah.
And mushrooms.
That kind of makes a lot of sense if you think about, like when the body is in that acute, like active fight, like you kind of just want to let the body do its thing. And then it's usually like most of us feel so crappy after because the it's like gone after this fight. And then you have all this cleanup that the body has to do, right? Like after, I always explain this to my patients with like when they've just gotten over COVID or the flu and they still feel like crap. I'm like, well, your body, it's battled, but now you like have all the carnage from the battle and it's it takes a minute to clean all that up, right? Like your lymphatic system has to get rid of everything, and there's all these free radicals floating around the body. So your body needs a lot of support during that time.
Totally. And mushrooms are also like a great antioxidant during that time. And I think for that reason can also be really helpful for like any kind of like exercise intolerance that comes with like chronic viral infection or long COVID, or even just after having like the flu.
Yeah, like that muscle fatigue and weakness that some people will get. They'll be like, I just feel like I'm tired and achy. Yeah,
exactly. And like cordyceps can be really helpful for that, especially just for if you're like feeling like you don't have the endurance that you want.
Yeah.
A combination of cordyceps and reishi. And then those are also happen to be like strong antivirals.
Yeah, which is great.
They're also exactly. Yeah. And then one that people often don't think about is oyster mushroom.
Oh, really?
So oyster mushroom is really high in ergothioneine. Do you ever use ergothioneine in your practice? Are you familiar with that?
No, compound? I don't use that. I'm familiar, but I don't use it. What else can you use?
So ergothioneine is like pretty similar in its action once it's in the body to like glutathione.
Oh, okay.
And we have specific transporters that are only for ergothioneine. And ergothioine is basically only found in like mushrooms and blue-green algae. And so it's kind of this cool example of how we've evolved with those organisms.
Yeah.
And it crosses the blood-brain barrier.
Oh, it does. I use so much algae in my practice. We use spirulina and chlorella.
Oh, cool.
Oh, but so that's interesting. Okay, but in oyster mushrooms, so you can add those in as well.
Yeah, and it's really high in oyster mushrooms. And it's also in a lot, it's like in maitake and shiitake, but oysters, specifically like the golden oyster, it has the most ergothioneine out of any mushroom. And almost 100% of ergothioneine is bioavailable. So like if you're eating mushrooms, most of the ergothioneine in those mushrooms will be taken up into the bloodstream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then your cells can actually store ergothioneine for like up to a month. And so it's kind of like this antioxidant storage mechanism that you can develop. Cool. And there's some really cool research looking at like the use of ergothioneine in preeclampsia and kind of these like high oxidative stress conditions and mitochondrial damage conditions. And I think that there's like a lot to be learned with ergothioneine. There's not very many like human clinical studies, but a lot being done in like mice and laboratory research.
Very cool. Sorry, I keep looking down if you're watching this video.
That's okay.
Taking notes because I'm learning so much.
Totally fine.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
and then the other cool thing about ergothioneine too is that it can actually bind to metals, and so it can decrease copper toxicity.
Oh, wow.
And help with like the copper zinc balance in the brain.
Oh, that's really cool.
So
does it act as a binder for other things? Like would it work for like mycotoxins or?
I was just thinking about this actually.
I used chlorella and algae as like a binder for a lot of my mold toxicity patients. It's interesting that that's in there. I didn't even know that compound was in there, but I wonder if that's part of that mechanism. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Yeah.
Cool. More things to be researched.
Totally. Yeah. There's always more. Cool. Yeah. The like mushrooms in mycotoxins is like my next project of something that I want to write about and look more into.
Would be such a good project. I mean, I think we're seeing like, I don't know, I personally am seeing mycotoxin illness on the rise, like so many people having trouble with it. And it's really interesting. And you know, and that has such an impact on the immune system, makes you more susceptible to EBV and Lyme and all these things. And, so I feel like there's got to be some benefit. I mean, I also see in my patients with, mold toxicity, their T cells and, their cytokines go way down because it like completely suppresses the immune system. So mushrooms have a benefit for those patients, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always have to explain to my patients that mushrooms are not the same thing as mycotoxins.
Oh, yeah, I know. That is a common thing too, right?
Yeah. They get so nervous. They're like, I don't want to take the medicinal mushrooms because I have mycotoxin problems.
They're good for you.
It's like, this is not the same issue. Yeah.
No.
If anything, they'll be beneficial. And that being said, like if mushrooms are not like dried well and they're not stored well, they can absolutely contain certain molds that will produce mycotoxins. Yeah. But that's like that's not the majority of the time. And if you're getting your mushrooms from a good source and you're storing them well, it really shouldn't be a concern. Yeah.
Well, we've kind of touched a little bit on like, talking about like, helping with resilience and like, recovery from exercise, but we can talk a little bit about their like adaptogenic properties. I feel like they're also fantastic for your adrenal system and your nervous system, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the two main mushrooms that come to mind when I think about kind of the HPA axis or adrenal health would be like reishi and cordyceps.
Yeah.
And reishi is amazing in that it has really this like amphoteric effect where it can really help with energy, but it can also help you to feel calm and help with sleep.
Yeah.
And there's some cool research specifically with women who have fibromyalgia showing that it helped to regulate morning cortisol levels and help to increase them.
Yeah.
Which is what we want,
Yes,
right? We want
yes.
good cortisol
In the morning, yes.
Yeah. And then reishi also has this very kind of nourishing effect to the heart.
Yeah.
And can help to kind of just like calm the nervous system. And I think of this generally like as an energetic impact of mushrooms. It's like they're very grounded. It's grounding medicine.
Yeah.
And just like thinking about, you know, mushrooms and mycelium and the earth and connecting, and it's just like all it's very grounding.
Yeah.
And so I think it can be really helpful for people who have that kind of like nervous system buzz from adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, where they're just like their cortisol's low and their adrenaline's to the roof and they're, you know, having heart palpitations and not sleeping and just completely dysregulated. And I think that's such a good point. A lot of times the dysregulation is they're not grounded, right? They're running around doing a million things. They're super busy. They're not in touch with their body. They're not in touch with the earth. So I feel like walking in the woods and looking at mushrooms is also a great remedy for that as well. Like taking the forest baths and those kinds of things. Like, taking the time for that is so helpful.
Exactly. And then on the other side of that, it's like for a more, I think something that's like, it's still tonifying, but a little more stimulating, I would say, is like cordyceps.
Yeah.
And cordyceps pairs really well with like rhodiola and eleuthero and some of these other adaptogenic herbs. And cordyceps can help, especially with just kind of like endurance, like throughout the day.
Keeping that energy up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the other cool aspect that I kind of mentioned earlier with reishi and cordyceps is that they can really support endurance through decreasing oxidative stress in the body. So sometimes when it's like your endurance is impacted, is low. When your endurance is impacted, that's because there's like exercise is like an inflammatory process, especially like intense exercise. And so if you don't have enough reserves to like counteract that, then you're going to feel a lot more like fatigued faster. You're going to have a lot more like muscle pain. You're not going to feel good from exercise, but it's like you need exercise to feel good. And so it's like, how do you get out of that loop? I think that mushrooms can be really helpful for helping people.
Yeah. You know, in my practice, again, I treat a lot of viral stuff, but mostly patients come to me that are really burnt out in every sense of the word. But oftentimes their cortisol levels are really, really low. And cortisol, you know, most of us think of it as a stress hormone, but as you know, like we need it in the morning and it does have anti-inflammatory properties. So when your cortisol levels are low, you do need more support to help reduce inflammation, like from exercise, right? And so usually when you feel crappy after exercise, it's usually a sign to me that your adrenals are having a hard time, like pumping out some of those good anti-inflammatories. But mushrooms can help you like in both ways, right? They're going to act as the anti-inflammatory and they're going to help, especially the two you just mentioned, are going to help like with cortisol balance, which is like a great win-win. Fantastic thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think too, since we're talking about adrenals and like the HPA axis, there's also, right, like the HPO axis, and it's like mushrooms can also be supportive to the ovaries and help to kind of normalize like regular ovulation cycles, which is kind of cool. So maitake comes in there, especially that there's research in patients with PCOS where they did a comparative study with clomiphene or Clomid, which is like the typical drug that's used to bring ovulation, and maitake was almost just as effective.
Which
And
is
so
so amazing because you think about the
it's so
side
amazing.
effects from Clomid. I just had a patient that was on Clomid for 2 months. She gained 35 pounds, and her system is completely out of whack, and she didn't get pregnant. She's so frustrated. She's like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I took this med and it made me so a mess. And I think we actually are just going to switch her to some mushrooms because
try the maitake.
Yeah.
It's like seems to be pretty effective. And I think maitake also, has its own kind of like adaptogenic properties that I don't totally understand, but it has.
But it's good for you. It's doing something good.
It's good for you. It's good for your immune system. It's like, it helps with ovulation. I think that anything that's like supporting ovulation is like a good sign that it's like helping your body feel safe, right? It's like the body, like we're not going to ovulate if there's like danger, if you're too stressed, if
there's an infection.
Yeah. If your body's not feeling healthy enough to be pregnant, it won't get pregnant most of the time.
Yeah.
But maitake can
really help with that.
With that.
Yeah. So let's talk about different preparations or different ways that mushrooms can be taken, or like what are your favorite like ways to have people take them?
Yeah. Well, there's many different kinds of preparations, and it kind of depends on, I'd say, like patient preference. Because if you're going the liquid route, which some people prefer tinctures, then what you want to be looking for is a dual extract. So if those polysaccharides that we talked about in the beginning of this conversation are not going to be extracted in alcohol. So you can't do like a typical tincture that you would do with other kinds of botanicals. And so you really want to make sure that liquid extract has gone through a process where it's been boiled in water and then additionally extracted in alcohol to get all of the alcohol soluble compounds in addition to the water soluble compounds. Yeah. And then, I honestly like don't use liquid mushroom extracts very much at all. Some people really prefer that.
Yeah.
I think that,
because you want to get the benefit from the cell wall and the other things that are in there.
Yeah. And you're not going to be getting the chitin from that. Yeah. If people are sensitive to like eating mushrooms, then they might actually do better with liquid. Yeah. But I mostly use the powdered mushroom extracts in my practice. And that's like what's easiest for people. It's easiest to dose it. It's like with liquid, depending on the company, it's like, it's really hard to know like how many grams of mushroom you're getting per milliliter of liquid. And so with the powders, it's like, you can see on the label, it's like, here's exactly 1 gram of mushroom. Yeah. Especially, if it's like a 1-to-1, then like there's
and if you're dealing with someone who doesn't like to swallow pills, can't you have them open up the powder and mix it in with something in most cases? Because it's not going to be much of a taste, right? In certain, I'm sure some of them might have more of a taste than others.
And you really want to make sure that the powder says powdered mushroom extract. So if it's just a mushroom powder, then you're still going to get some benefit. But the heating process, the extraction, will bring out more of those beta glucans and more of the ergothioneine, more of the triterpenes, which we haven't talked about, but those are the more alcohol soluble constituents. And if you don't have the enzymes to digest the chitin and break it down, then you don't have to worry about that if it's been an extracted powder. Whereas if it's just a powder,
I gotcha. Yeah, you
may not be able to get everything out of it. It's just not going to be as bioavailable.
Yeah, I gotcha. So,
but it would be a good source of fiber.
Powdered mushroom extract is what you want to look for in a
powdered mushroom extract.
Got it.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a kind of a big issue right now in the mushroom world between mushroom and mycelium and myceliated grain. And I feel like that is a very important thing to talk about and educate people about. And so what I'll say is mycelium is the underground portion of the fungal organism. It's what we don't see. It's kind of like the roots of the fungal organism. And the mushroom is the fruit or the fruiting body. So mushroom and fruiting body are synonymous. When you are growing mycelium in a lab, it's usually going to be grown on some kind of grain that it's eating, and that's called the substrate. And it's almost impossible to like separate out the mycelium from the grain that it's been growing on.
Yeah.
And so that process it's just not done. They're usually going to be waiting until the mycelium has consumed most of the grain.
Got it.
And then that gets processed. Sometimes it's just powdered, sometimes it's extracted. But there's not going to be any actual mushroom in that. And so when companies are growing myceliated grain, which is basically like tempeh, and powdering that and encapsulating that and then calling it a mushroom, that's a problem.
Yeah, because you're not actually getting the benefit, right? You're not getting like all the things we just talked about, the beta glucans and the polysaccharides and all that.
Yeah, you're getting some benefit. Yeah, because mycelium, depending on the mushroom, has certain compounds that the mushroom doesn't have. It has the beta glucans as well, but it's diluted. It's like half of that capsule is probably the grain that the mycelium is grown on.
Got it.
And then it's like, do your patients have a sensitivity to that
grains?
grain?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, then that would be a problem. You might not feel so good.
That would be a problem. Yeah. And so there's a lot of companies that are, because it's like, like supplements aren't regulated. And so the supplement can say mushroom, and then if you look on the label, it'll say like mycelium, or with additional ingredients, it'll say there's brown rice in there or something. It's like, well, that's like very deceiving. And like most people aren't going to be like looking that deeply into like what's in it. They'll just say like, oh, it's a mushroom supplement. Like, that's great. But yeah, so that's a huge problem. And there are a few companies that I've learned about recently that have been able to just do a liquid mycelium culture. And so that makes it so that their products do actually, like when they say mycelium, it is actually just pure mycelium, which is really cool. But this is extremely rare. And it's like one company in the US that I know of that's doing that. So most of the time I'd say like, always look at the label and see if it says other ingredients. If it says any kind of grain, then you know that it's like it's diluted. It's not going to be the best option.
Got it.
Whereas when it's made with just the mushroom or the fruiting body, it's like that's the above ground portion of the fungal organism. It's not going to be diluted. You're not going to have that issue. There's a lot of a lot more of the medicinal compounds that are produced
in the fruit
as the mushroom grows. And in the fruit, because it's also like that's the above ground portion. That's kind of what's subjected to the elements. So it's also going to have like more of those secondary metabolites.
Got it.
And generally also like more chitin, more beta glucans. So I think it's just better medicine.
Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit about your company?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, I'm saying all of this with a lot of bias because
you have a company, but that's okay.
Because I have a company, but that bias is based on like a lot of education and research. So right now we have 3 different formulas. And there's a formula for the brain and nerves, just like our nervous system formula, and our immune system formula, and a lungs formula.
Oh, cool.
And it's always, it's kind of interesting because it's like I prescribe my immune formula to a patient who has PCOS. Because I'm like, well, it has like the perfect amount of reishi and maitake. So,
and you can't name
like,
a supplement 2 things. It's like immune and
immune,
ovarian.
Exactly. But the intention with this company was really to bring mushroom extracts to my patients initially that were just like worked well, that had them that had the mushrooms in the amounts that I wanted them based on traditional use and current research, and were high quality. And so that initial goal was for my patients, and now that has kind of
expanded,
myceliated out,
of course,
to
as it would,
the world. And I think like the dream is to have like multiple organ system formulas. But like I said, there's like so much overlap that I always find myself, prescribing. It's like the lungs formula for like COPD, but also for like endurance athletes, or if you're going to high altitude.
That sounds like a good one. What is the name of your company?
Lucidum Medicinals.
Oh, very cool. And where can people get them?
lucidummedicinals.com.
Fantastic.
On our website.
Awesome.
And we're in a few apothecaries in Washington, but not elsewhere in the US
Yeah.
quite yet. But yeah, online is definitely the best place to get them. Yeah.
And do you guys grow them? Tell me about the like manufacturing process.
Yeah. So all of our powdered extracts come from Jeff Chilton's company, Namex, North American Mushroom Extracts, which that company is based out of British Columbia.
Yeah.
All of the mushrooms are grown in China. Yeah. They're all organic. They're all tested for heavy metals and medicinal compounds. And I trust him and his process and knowledge so much. And that was like part of the other reason why I felt comfortable even like starting this company is like, one, I do not have time to grow mushrooms.
Yes.
Like I have a private practice and a baby and
all the things.
like, I don't have time. And it's like, why like recreate the wheel? It's like, I already know this person that's growing these amazing mushrooms that I fully trust. And so, so we get our mushrooms from Namex. Fantastic. And I just love them. And it's like, they smell like mushrooms.
Yeah, as they should.
Like you want your mushrooms like, to smell earthy, like mushrooms, earthy. You want them to be the color of the mushroom. And a lot of the, I've seen in like the myceliated grain powders, it's like, they're all just kind of like bland white looking. I'm like, that's like, why is really a chaga? Yeah. It's like, why is a chaga powder white?
That shouldn't be
that's
white.
Weird.
Yeah. So that's another good thing to look for, right? Like if you're seeing a capsule, like, and if it's like a bland white and it says all that, you should be like, maybe that's not what I should be taking.
Exactly. You want to like do some organoleptic discernment of like, is this actually like look and smell like a mushroom?
Yeah.
If yes. Then continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like helping people know like where to buy, like what to look for in a supplement is super helpful. How about all of the mushroom coffee blends that you see out there? What are your thoughts on those?
My thoughts are that, so I'm happy that people are getting mushrooms into them.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Look at the label.
Yeah.
If it's like some of those companies absolutely use the like mushroom powdered extract and they say it on there.
So it will say mushroom powdered extract and that's what you want to look for.
Yep. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be super effective. Also, like the actual doses of the mushrooms in there are probably pretty low. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the like added benefit is largely placebo, which is also wonderful. Yeah. We love placebo.
Yeah, like placebo is amazing.
It works.
But if you're trying to like specifically target like an immune cell or cancer or something like that, you're not going to get that.
Oh yeah. Like I don't have my oncology patients like using that as their main mushroom supportive care. Yeah. And then there's this other kind of weird aspect that I'm interested in of like, so coffee is really high in tannins. At like when you blend tannins with polysaccharides, it actually forms like a tannin polysaccharide complex. And then when you consume it, it's not going to interact with your immune cells in the same way. There's like so much to that that's like can be picked apart. Like, like that complex is probably going to be like broken down by stomach acid, but maybe not all of it. And it's like probably plays like a minor role, but it's just one more thing where I'm like, just take the mushrooms on an empty stomach with a glass of water if you want to have the full effect.
Yeah. I think. Or if you're going to do a mushroom coffee, like have the ones that do not have coffee in them, right? Like one that's like almost a replacement for coffee, right? Just a mushroom powder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like coffee, they've tried to like put everything in your coffee. I had a patient once that was like opening up her supplements, all of them, into her coffee and drinking it. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure that you're going to still get the benefit from everything. Like, she was like, it's the only way I'll take them. And I'm like, well, maybe we could put them
like, does your coffee still taste good?
And I was like, I'm sure it tastes terrible. Like, I don't know. You know, sometimes people do weird things.
Yeah. I'm like, coffee probably tastes better without mushrooms in it. But like if you like the mushrooms in there, go for it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, what else? What else do we need to know about mushrooms? I'm sure there's like a million other things that we could dive into.
There are so many things. I mean, we can just kind of like go through some other body systems that people don't usually think about, I guess, for like and how mushrooms can help benefit those systems. So let's just like start at the head, I guess. So brain memory, that's something that we haven't really talked about yet.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think something that people are, using lion's mane for a lot. Lion's mane is a good example of like, there is a compound that's only found in the mycelium that does have very supportive qualities to nerve growth factor. And so that compound called irinosine is not found in the fruiting body. And so a lot of people think that you need to have the mycelium to have that benefit for the nervous system and the brain and memory. What I'll say is like, yes, irinosine is helpful. It stimulates nerve growth factor synthase. And a lot of the research and the clinical trials on lion's mane are with the fruiting body. And it's still helpful. And like even the research with mice showing that it helps with nerve regeneration after nerve damage, that's the fruiting body.
It's not.
And so we don't need to be so reductionist and say like, if this constituent isn't in it, then it's not effective. Like we know that with herbs, right? It's like, just because there's like the one constituent that all the research is on, it doesn't mean that there's like no synergy with other compounds or that's like the most important thing in that organism.
I mean, I think that's the beauty about herbal medicine, right? Is that it's not like, I feel like in Western medicine, it is so reductionist, is we take one compound and give it to you. But herbal medicine, it's like, here's this herb, it has, a whole plethora of compounds. And that's why it works so beautifully with the body, because it's going to talk to the body and it's going to use this compound for something and this compound for something else, right?
Yeah. And so whether your lion's mane has the mycelium in it or it's just the fruiting body, I think it will be probably equally effective and helpful for memory. Unfortunately, with lion's mane, what all of the research shows is that when you stop taking it, it stops working. And so it's kind of like a lifelong commitment
to take it. You get on it and you're just going to take it. Yeah.
It's like the benefits that you're getting while you're taking it aren't going to last necessarily with most people.
Interesting. Different than like the immune function, whereas you said it kind of trains your immune system. We're not getting that same effect with
exactly. Whereas there's another mushroom called tremella. Tremella fusiformis is kind of the species that most research is on. It's also called witch's butter as the common name. And it's like kind of creepy looking moist mushroom that's like very, very high in polysaccharides and typically used more for like skin care. But there's a human clinical trial showing that it helped to improve gray matter volume in the brain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so I like including tremella with my lion's mane for like brain and nerve health. And then also those like ergothioneine rich mushrooms as well. So like oyster mushroom. There's some cool research showing that it's like people who have more ergothioneine transporters are less likely to develop neurodegenerative disease.
Oh, wow.
Than people who have less. So it's
so
like
you want
the
to have more of those ergothioneine receptors.
Exactly. Yeah. To take up more ergothioneine from diet. There's also, there's a lot of like, these are all, studies that have been done in populations that eat mushrooms. And so it's like these studies aren't being done in the United States. It's largely going to be done in like Asia and Russia. But so that's kind of like, I think like brain health, those like main mushrooms that I think about. And then moving down, I don't actually think about mushrooms for thyroid health as much, although I do use reishi quite a bit for Hashimoto's because it can help to increase T regulatory cells and but it's like more of, I think, less about thyroid and more about just like autoimmune disease generally and how mushrooms can be beneficial there. And that's another point to make is I think a lot of people who have autoimmune disease are concerned about taking mushrooms because it's going to stimulate the immune system, but it just doesn't have that same impact. It's not like taking echinacea. It is not the same thing.
No, I feel like I use mushrooms in many of my Hashimoto's protocols because of exactly that, because I find it modulates, like I feel like it brings antibodies down, and not to mention so many autoimmune things are triggered by a chronic infection, right? So if you think about what the mushrooms are doing for the immune system,
Epstein-Barr virus.
Epstein-Barr or Lyme or anything, all those other things we've kind of talked about, if those are going to lower the viral load in your system, it's going to help the immune system stop having to be such in a tizzy and like trying to attack everything. So it does I feel like it does regulate things that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, continuing to move down the body, I think that, again, with like heart health, I really think about reishi mushrooms specifically. And mushrooms generally, I mean, the heart and the whole like cardiovascular system, that chitin compound in the fungal cell wall can help to lower LDL levels. And also bind to lipids generally and just lower cholesterol levels overall. And also bind to bile acids. And so it can kind of, you know, decrease overall enterohepatic circulation of cholesterol, and also like increase LDL receptors on the liver. And so,
which is fantastic.
Get that out of the bloodstream. And so mushrooms, I think I never use mushrooms by themselves for like treating cardiovascular disease, but I tell all of my patients with cardiovascular disease to eat mushrooms. I don't think that they're like strong enough to be the main treatment, but they're
definitely going to enhance whatever else you're doing.
They will absolutely. Yeah.
And then obviously lungs, because you have a lung formula.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I'm like heart. Okay. Yeah. Lungs, so supportive to the lungs and for any kind of, I think like, obstructive lung kind of condition. Yeah. And that's like reishi and cordyceps and, oyster mushroom as well. So there's a lot of research using a specific kind of beta glucan found in oyster mushrooms called pleurin.
Oh, cool.
And and that polysaccharide can help to decrease like the number of respiratory infections.
Oh, wow.
That you're getting. And then also help to like modulate the allergic response.
Cool.
And so, and oyster, I mean, that's like one of my favorite edible mushrooms. And so I always tell people it's like, just if you can eat it, just like
eat them.
Eat it. Yeah. I'd rather like eat oyster mushroom than take it in a capsule.
In a capsule. Yeah.
And then it's like we went through the whole digestive system. Kidneys, I think that, so reishi and cordyceps are both like incredibly supportive to the kidneys. And there's some cool research showing that patients who had received kidney transplant who were given cordyceps responded better to the medication post-transplant, which is like immunosuppressive medication, right? And so people often say like, stay away from mushrooms if you're on immunosuppressive therapy. And it was not the case with the medication used in these kidney transplant patients. It made the medication work better, and it also helped to improve kidney function tests. So there's like better, I know. Yeah.
So again, I feel like all these stories are kind of these little like things you're sharing. It all just speaks to how modulating they are, right? Like they're going to come into the body and it's almost like they get there and they're like, what does this body need? We're going to help with this, right? It's not like it's always going to stimulate. It's not like it's always going to reduce something. It's working with our bodies, which is
they are cool. Like true system tonifiers.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the way I think about them is they have the same cell type as us, right? Aren't they eukaryotic cells? Versus other plant, right? Aren't they eukaryotic cell mushrooms? Most of them?
Fungi are more closely related to us than they are to plants or than we are to plants.
Yeah.
And we're like very similar in the way that they interact with our physiology, I think is like a product of that and like really shows like how well we work together. And speaking to that point too about just like mushrooms and immunosuppressive therapy. And I think that there's like always these kind of like a risk assessment with like mushrooms and certain drugs and like if there's going to be interaction. And it's always like immunosuppressive therapy, chemotherapy, and hypoglycemic agents and blood thinners are kind of like the main kind of medications that people are concerned about. And what I'll say to like the hypoglycemic aspect, because that's always one, it's like, if you're like being treated for diabetes, like don't eat mushrooms or like take mushrooms because they have the like lower your blood sugar. If mushrooms were that effective at lowering blood sugar, then they would be used for diabetes.
Yes, treatment. They would. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And like, yes, they will help to like slow the absorption of glucose and can help to regulate blood sugar levels. But like, you're not going to eat a mushroom and see your glucose drop like drastically. No. Yeah. And you're not going to take a mushroom supplement and see your glucose drop drastically. Yeah. And then like same with like the blood thinning effect, it's like all very hypothetical. It's like taking large amounts of reishi mushroom for a long period of time might thin the blood. You're not going to bleed out from taking reishi mushroom. Yeah. If you want to be careful about it, it's like, don't take it, a week before surgery. Yeah. Like that's totally appropriate to be careful about. But it's also probably not going to have like a huge impact. Yeah. And then like using alongside chemotherapeutic agents, it's like, I am so fortunate that all of my oncology patients, like their oncologists are on board with their naturopathic care. And for the most part, like I've been very lucky. And my patients have been very lucky most of all. But there's a lot of oncologists that are very concerned about, mushrooms interacting with chemotherapy. And I mean, that's such a thing that's like very specific to the United States cancer care. Yeah. It's like in Japan, there's like a compound that's from turkey tail mycelium called Crestin. That's like a synthesized drug that's originally from something called PSK or polysaccharide. Crestin that's from turkey tail mycelium. It's used in cancer care there for breast cancer. It's like part of oncology protocols. Of course, like we don't have that here. If anything, there's like more fear around that. Yeah, there's a lot of fear around that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been fantastic. I feel like we could keep talking for another hour, but I've got to keep going. But so one more time, if people are interested in working with you, where can they find you? Like you talked about your website for the supplement company, which if you want to say that again, just so people can hear it again.
Yes. So supplement company, lucidumedicinals.com. And I'd love to offer your listeners a discount.
Oh, fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes.
And so, okay, great. Yeah, they can get 20% off. Great. And I'll make a discount code that's Dr. Kinney. So DrKinney.
Perfect.
All caps. And then my private practice website, plus like if you want to like look at my mushroom blog and learn more about mushrooms generally, that website is drannasitkoff.com.
Fantastic. Super easy. And you're on Instagram, right? People can follow you there?
I am, Dr. Anna Sitkoff. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was amazing. I learned so much. I took all these notes. I can't wait to dive into some of the things. This was great. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media to find more helpful tips and information. You can find me at Dr. Kinney on all of the platforms. And please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.